All right, good morning or good afternoon, depending on which part of the country you're tuning in from. I'm just going to give it another minute or so as I still see people actually logging in, and then we're going to get the show on the road. Right, so while we're waiting for people to sign on, I'm just going to send a quick poll out there just to see where everybody's at in terms of their AI journey and AI governance within their organization. So the question here is going to be, how confident are you that you know exactly what AI is being used by who and how they're using it within your organization? So the four possible options here are going to be low, which is I have no idea. Medium low, which is I somewhat have a clue, but maybe not, maybe so. Medium is I've got a pretty good idea, or high is I have absolute control over everything that's actually used in my organization. So I'd love to see your votes. Yeah, so feel free to send in your replies. It should show up on the polls tab there. Interesting. Are you guys not seeing the poll? Okay, yeah, I see that people are submitting it here. So actually, yeah, I'm actually seeing that there's a lot of people in the medium category, so have a pretty good idea. Medium low is also second in there. All right. Excellent. So we've got pretty good turnout today. Pretty excited to deliver the session today, which is going to be the 90-day AI adoption plan for business leaders. So let's get the show on the road. All right. All right, so for those of you who I have not yet had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Vince Fung. I'm the founder and CEO here at Expera Information Technology. Would love to stay in touch with you afterwards. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience, but also a few new faces as well. So if you haven't connected with me already, feel free to follow me on Instagram. I'm under @NinjaVince. Follow me on X or Twitter @VFung Expera IT. Would also love to stay connected with you on LinkedIn. So the QR code's actually on the next screen here. And if you have any questions afterwards, I would love to hear from you. So shoot off an email to me, vince.fung@experait.com, and I'll answer any questions or try and help you out as much as I can. So here's the QR code. Pull out your phones, scan the QR code, and send a connection request to me on LinkedIn. If you can send a note just to say that you actually connected with me from this webinar, that would be fantastic. All right, so for the new people who I've not yet had a chance to meet, you're probably wondering, who the heck is Vince Fung? And what does he know about technology, AI, and cyber risk? All right, so I'm going to rewind the clock a little over 4 decades. So at the age of 10, I fell in love with computers. So this computer here is the Commodore 64, and my family was lucky enough. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, so I had an aunt and uncle who actually gave us a Commodore 64 as a Christmas present way back in 1983. And I absolutely fell in love with this machine. I was pounding away at the keyboard, spending hours and hours. Started out playing games, but I was never much of a gamer. So I started actually experimenting with how do you make the computer do things that it wasn't actually inherently designed for out of the box. So I started pushing the boundaries, started trying to connect it to outside devices. I loved computers so much that I decided to pursue my degree in electrical engineering. So at the University of Calgary, I completed my bachelor's degree in electrical engineering with a minor in computer science. And while I was still finishing my 4th year of university, I started Expera IT. So this was way back in 1996. You probably love my haircut there. So you can still see those bubble monitors with the beige exteriors. That was my life back then. And since I started the company, the world evolved really quickly over the next 2 decades. We had the internet. So when I started back in 1996, most companies were not even connected to the internet. And over the first few years, we started helping businesses connect their business to the internet, get access to email, sharing like dial-up accounts across their office, getting their office networked and connected together. And then after computers were pretty much standard connected to the internet, the cloud became a huge thing. So every one of your businesses is probably on the cloud today with Microsoft 365, maybe using platforms like HubSpot or Salesforce, QuickBooks Online, NetSuite. All of those products are all cloud products. And that's pretty much a standard part of our life now. And then as with any type of innovation, whether it's technology or otherwise, the bad guys always find a way to exploit them. And what happened after over the last few years has been really a huge uptick in cyber attacks. And this was really a transformational part of my business. So instead of just taking a look at like putting technology in place, I actually saw firsthand a massive situation. So this involved a small family-owned regional airline based in Western Canada, and they called me up in a panic. I remember his name. He actually said, "Hey Vince, I've got an emergency. You were guy recommended to me that could help. We were hit with this massive ransomware attack, and all their systems had actually been wiped out. This whole airline could not operate. And I saw firsthand the devastation that this caused. I saw the impact that it had on their customers who were relying on them for travel. I saw the impact on their employees. I saw the impact on the owners. So for the owners and the executive team, this company that they had actually been building as a family business over 52 years, I remember the comment they made. They said, "We're literally hours from going out of business." And this is the reality that our world is in right now. Is cyber attacks are a massive parts of what we have to deal with. So I realized I had to do something. I shifted focus to help businesses stay protected. And we really focused a lot on being a security first managed service provider to help prevent ransomware and keep businesses protected. And today, security is still a huge part of what we do. It's actually the core of how we deliver our services. But just in the last 3 years, there has become this huge opportunity. Okay, and this opportunity is where businesses can now actually leverage technology in a way that was not possible for the last 3 decades, right? The technology that's available to us is a technology that businesses can embrace that will actually make impact. And this really became a reality when ChatGPT or OpenAI released their GPT 3.5 model back at the end of 2023. Prior to that, AI was kind of this unicorn of an idea that only the huge multinational companies had access to. But in the last 3 years, AI has now actually been democratized, and every single company has access to this power. So AI is a huge disruptor, but it also carries huge risk, right? And what we're going to talk about today is you need to have a clear adoption strategy, right? And this adoption strategy is critical so that you can actually balance the risk and the reward that AI will make within your organization. So today, I'm invited to speak all across North America. I've spoken at NASDAQ, New York City Bar Association, at various universities, industry events, and my passion is really in educating business leaders around cyber risk and how to adopt AI in a safe, secure, and successful way. We help hundreds of businesses all across Canada. We help them uncover opportunities and understand risk. And we ultimately help them with strategies to implement new technologies like AI while managing and mitigating the risks that it comes with to help them thrive while staying protected from the threats that inherently exist. As I mentioned, what we do is we help businesses safely, securely, and successfully embrace the future. And that's what the presentation today is all about. I've done a lot of sessions over the last couple of years around AI adoption and really kind of talking about what possibilities AI has and how people can get started. And this presentation is actually going to take things to the next level. This isn't AI 101. This is what happens next. Okay, the reality is that AI is already inside your business, whether you plan for it or not, right? And that's why I did that poll at the beginning, was how many of you actually know exactly what AI is actually running in your business? And the chances are, even the biggest, most locked down organizations don't have a full picture of exactly what AI is actually in use, right? Like we have all these different tools. We have people putting data, sensitive information, connecting tools to different systems. And a lot of times it's virtually impossible for an organization to have full control over what's actually happening there, right? So AI is actually being used probably by the vast majority of your employees, whether you plan for it or not, right? How they're using it is actually a matter that you actually need to get your handle on, right? So the problem is not AI adoption, it's actually unmanaged AI adoption, right? So when people are starting to use tools that are not sanctioned by the organization, using tools that could actually put your organization at risk, where people are putting sensitive data, sensitive intellectual property in these AI chats that are stored possibly on in countries where it's not friendly to the West, possibly where their accounts are not secured, that actually puts your organization at risk. And unmanaged AI adoption is actually the biggest risk your organization faces, aside from cyber attacks, right? So the goal here is not to implement more AI. The goal is, how do you make AI help your employees do better work? Okay, and here's a few interesting tidbits. Okay, Canada was actually one of the world leaders in AI research, right? So the minds behind modern AI, Hinton, Bengio, Sutton, these are names in the AI world where they are considered the godfathers of AI. Like, all of them were actually based in Canada. They were all Nobel laureates. Hinton, based in Toronto, University of Toronto, Bengio, Montreal, Sutton in Edmonton. These people were the godfathers of AI, and they actually created a lot of the theory and the mathematical models and the ideas that modern AI is actually wrapped against. Canada in 2017 was the first country in the world to have a national AI strategy, right? This was the pan-Canadian AI strategy that was actually implemented. The government actually allocated budget to drive AI adoption. And those three names were all Turing Award laureates who actually built their work here in Canada. Okay. But now Canada seems to have fallen behind, right? Like, the two leaders in the AI race are probably US and China. And Canada wants to actually help businesses put AI to work effectively. Today, it's estimated that only 12% of companies are using AI effectively in their businesses. The goal for the Canadian government is by 2034 to have 60% of businesses leverage the power of AI in a beneficial, strategic way to actually drive business initiatives. So just in the past few weeks, you've probably seen on the news that the Canadian government has allocated $174 million to drive AI adoption in small and mid-sized companies. This is really exciting because your organization can likely get a chunk of this, right? And the thing is, these funds, like, it varies from as little as about $500 to an IRAP grant where you can get hundreds of thousands of dollars if you have the right plan and strategy that's really innovative to put AI to work in your organization to help Canadian businesses become world leaders in how AI is actually being used. Okay, but a caution is that you should not build your AI plan around a grant, right? Even though this money is available, you shouldn't actually look at this money as the main driver for your project, right? The first thing you should do is actually design, architect, and come up with a project that truly drives your business initiatives forward. And then look at the grant as a way to actually fund and support it, but not define it. Okay, the Canadian adoption strategy really revolves around three pillars, right? Like, the Canadian government wants us to make sure that we actually have trust, which is the confidence for us to use AI safely and responsibly within the organization. Okay, we want companies to have the opportunity to drive economic benefit and really thrive and become global leaders in how they're leveraging technology so that we're more competitive, both across the country as well as globally. And sovereignty. So this is an area that is relatively new. And as you've probably seen, just in the past year or so, we've actually seen major disruption across the globe with what used to be friendly relationships, and how those relationships have actually impacted how governments are actually looking at sovereignty. So Canada's always been heavily aligned with the US, and it's almost as if that border didn't exist. But now, with all of the tariffs and the trade wars that are happening, Both Europe and Canada and nations around the world are realizing that they need to hold sovereignty over technology, data, and talent and infrastructure to ensure that they're not actually being manipulated or at risk if a partner nation or a formerly friendly nation actually becomes hostile. So these are the three pillars of Canadian AI adoption. So what exactly does this look like? What is the strategy to implement AI within your organization? So we're going to look at, over the next 90 days, what sort of things you can do to take AI from a whole bunch of scattered experiments in your organization to some form of intentional adoption with a strategy and a roadmap so that you can truly drive the benefits without AI actually getting out of control. And instead of having AI actually take you down a path where it creates a risk, creates chaos, to actually have a very structured approach so that you can utilize AI in a very, very strategic and intentional way to help your organization thrive. So the 90-day plan looks something like this. So days 1 to 30 is really discovering what the opportunities are. So choosing the right work, looking at what data you have access to, and figuring out how you can actually utilize that data in an effective way. Okay. The next 30 days revolves around stabilization. So this is preparing data, putting guardrails in place, making sure that it's secure, the data is actually relevant. So one of the biggest challenges that when I meet with business leaders is data quality is actually a huge concern. And I'm going to touch a little bit more on data quality in the next few slides. But the quality of your data has to be pure in order for the AI to do its job effectively. Like if you have like old documents, irrelevant documents, or corrupt data, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? And AI is just going to accelerate that process. Okay, and then day 61 to 90 is really going to launch. Like once you've actually put those guardrails in place, cleaned your data, now you can actually utilize and leverage the power of AI so that you can actually multiply everybody's time within your organization. Okay, so let's take a look at the first stage, discover. Okay, so discover is actually where you ask the question, where can AI make work better within your organization? Okay, and some of the questions that you should be asking is not, what can AI do? Because I think we have a pretty good idea of what AI can do. There's also a lot of misconceptions, but I think the most important question in your organization that has the highest immediate value is to be able to ask the question, where does work get stuck in your organization? Right? So what are the bottlenecks? What are the things that cause work to slow down or essentially stop in your organization that we can actually figure out how to actually get past? And whether or not AI actually fits into the picture is another matter, because sometimes a work stoppage or a work bottleneck is more of a process issue than an AI issue, right? But by asking this question, you will actually get past those issues, which will solve problems within your organization. And then we'll also be able to isolate and figure out where does AI actually fit in? Or does AI even fit in at all in the areas that it's actually getting stuck on? Okay, so areas to look. So you want to look at things like where you have massive amounts of data, right? Like being able to actually find that needle in the haystack, using search, using AI to uncover that little piece of information that is valuable to get work that's unstuck. The second is being able to take massive amounts of data and summarize it. This is a huge time saver. So a lot of you are probably already doing this inside chat engines like ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude. You're probably taking files and large blocks of information or even web pages, dumping it into the AI and say, hey, tell me what this is actually saying in like 30 seconds instead of taking 3 hours to read through it. So AI is really, really powerful for that kind of stuff. Drafting responses, so using it to craft information. So taking grunt work out of your day-to-day work. Organizing information, so taking massive amounts of data and actually being able to actually sort it or regroup it into information that's actually more understandable. And then also using AI to follow up. Okay, so these are all areas that are potential areas where you can implement AI to help you drive advantages. But before you actually start turning on AI, you need to know where you stand. Okay, and there are a number of readiness questions that you need to be asking yourself, right? So flipping the switch to turn on AI across the organization without knowing where you stand is problematic, because it's going to make chaos become chaos on steroids. Okay, so 4 readiness questions that you should actually be asking is, are people ready? Are the employees that are using, let's say, the Microsoft tools in your organization, because you're probably already paying for tools like Microsoft 365. Those of you that might be on Google Workspace, same thing. Like, are those tools actually being fully utilized by people? Right. So I'll give you a couple examples. Having meeting transcription turned on is a huge boon for AI, right? Because when you actually transcribe meetings, AI now actually has information that I can actually reference. It can actually go back and say, oh, you had a conversation with client X about these topics, and during that conversation, these items actually were what was agreed to. And then the AI can actually utilize that information for different prompts. If people are not saving documents on the cloud, AI can't access it, right? So in order for AI to be properly utilized, people actually need to be leveraging the power of Microsoft 365. Instead of saving on classical file servers, they should be leveraging the power of OneDrive or SharePoint, right? And that's actually a huge part of readiness for the people, okay? Is security ready, right? So unless you actually have your Microsoft tenant secure, putting more data in your Microsoft tenant just puts more of your organization at risk, right? Like identity, multi-factor authentication, conditional access, all of these things must be in place before you start to unleash AI in your organization. And what about Microsoft 365, right? Or Google Workspace in some of your cases? Is that environment configured for Copilot, right? Like this is talking about like not just saving the documents there, but if you actually look under the hood, there are literally 100 different settings around Copilot and how it interacts with your Microsoft data, which is stored in a essentially a data warehouse that Microsoft calls the Microsoft Fabric. Like, is that environment configured properly so that your AI agents can actually effectively see and access that data in a secure and reliable way? And then fourth is your data ready? Okay, where is business information stored, right? If your business information is not stored in the cloud, or the information has a lot of old data that's irrelevant or data that's corrupt, that's a huge issue, right? I talked about data quality, and data quality is, as I mentioned, the biggest challenge that organizations actually face. Okay, so making sure your data is ready. Okay, and then once you've actually kind of looked at all of those things, before you start to turn anything on, you want to pick, for the next 90 days, just pick one workflow, right? If you pick multiple things, none of them are going to actually get improved. Just pick one thing that you want to make better, okay? And then once you've picked it, then you need to define what exactly does better look like? How do I actually measure that this was successful? Does it mean that I'm saving time? Does it mean that I'm improving quality, reducing friction internally or with your clients, or improving the quality in terms of consistency of the work? Like, all of these are different measures. And sometimes maybe you pick a workflow where all of these are relevant, and then you need to define like what does saving time actually look like? Is it like 10%, 20%, 100%? Quality, how do you measure that quality is improved? How do you measure that friction has been reduced? And how do you measure that consistency has been increased? So you need to actually figure all of those things out before you start to unleash AI on your systems. Okay, so then stage 2, once you've actually figured that out, is stabilize. Okay, again, before you unleash AI, you need to stabilize your environment. Okay, because the environment that AI is running on is the foundation of how your organization is going to scale. Okay, AI does not function without data. AI needs data, but the caveat to that is it should not get access to everything. I hear organizations actually say, hey, I want to connect our accounting system, our ERP system, our HR system, our research systems, our R&D department. I want to connect all of this to the AI engine. And they say, oh, we hired a summer student. and they know how to do this. But the reality is like, we're like, whoa, let's step back a little bit, because if you tie all this stuff together and you don't have the right security controls in place, it means that now every single employee that has access to your AI system can now pull salary details out of your HR. It can pull information about client contracts. It can pull intellectual property out of your organization. Do you necessarily want that to happen? Likely not, right? So the AI should not get access to everything. The goal is not maximum access. The goal is appropriate access. And from a security perspective and a risk perspective, we always talk about this concept of least privilege. The principle of least privilege is where people should only get access to what they absolutely need access to and nothing else. And that's the same with AI. AI is essentially something that you should treat like another employee. It should not run under the CEO's account. It should not run under your IT director's account, because those accounts have a high level of privilege. AI needs to have access using its own set of identity and credentials so that it only gets access to what it absolutely needs to get its job. And if you have different AI agents that are doing different things, you need to actually make sure that these AI agents have different levels of identity, so that each identity exposes only the information to the people that are accessing what that AI is accessing, so that they're not actually getting unauthorized or overshared access to things that are inappropriate to what they should be seeing. Okay. I promised I was going to go back to data quality. So data quality is the biggest AI challenge, right? And probably the biggest challenge around AI adoption is not so much around the technology side of things. It's around data science, right? And the model that we've actually built within Expera, as we've started building these frameworks and started helping organizations build systems to essentially aggregate information within a data warehouse, is that there are all of these levels. Okay, so at the first level, we have data. Okay, so a piece of data might actually be, like for us as an IT support organization, a piece of data might actually be, hey, we received 157 tickets today. Okay, so that is a piece of data. But the piece of data by itself is completely useless, right? It's just a piece of a point in time piece of data. It's a data point, but it needs context. Okay, data with context is what we call information. Okay, so data. If we go back to that, we received 157 tickets today. Normally, we receive 220 tickets. Okay, now we actually have some context around it. So today, it seems like the ticket count is actually lower than normal. Okay, then the next layer to that is knowledge. Okay, so when you actually take data, add context, and then actually ask the questions, why is the information the way it is? So why is our ticket count actually lower than normal? Oh, it's actually because we did a bunch of proactive work. Or, oh, it's because it happens to be a holiday in half of the country and we're not getting as many people. So knowledge is actually information with an additional set of data that is aggregated and referenced together with that. Okay, and then with that knowledge, you can now actually make decisions around it. So what do we actually do with that information? Do we actually like look at it and say, oh, it's because we actually did a bunch of proactive work? Now the decision might actually be, well, why don't we do more proactive work and maybe we can reduce the number of tickets further, right? And with those decisions, what we want to then do is look at the outcomes. Okay, so we've implemented more proactive work. Did it actually achieve the result that we wanted? And if it did, now it becomes wisdom. Okay, so you notice that as I actually went through that, not once did I actually mention AI in that entire chain of data to wisdom, right? And it's actually because AI may actually fit at different levels, but AI is not the end all for how you actually deal with this data to wisdom model. Okay, what it can do is data can potentially be used together with additional context to help you understand knowledge, because one of the things that AI is really, really great at is being able to take massive chunks of information and make sense of it. But you have to know what questions to ask, right? So unless you know what questions to ask, the AI is not going to surface that information. And then the questions that you need to ask are the decisions that you need to have answers to in order to make the decisions. And then the decisions that you make need to actually have then the reference points from the previous slide where I talked about like, does this actually make things better? Does it improve the workflow, reducing time, improve quality, and reduce friction, all of those things. And when you can actually create that loop, that's actually where the data to wisdom becomes a valid model. So I think this is a really important way for organizations to really think about how do you take your data and turn it into wisdom, because this is actually how you will successfully adopt AI in your organization. Okay, so a few caveats to that. AI can surface what people can access, right? So one of the things that I really love pointing out to clients is AI doesn't give people more access to what they already have. AI shines a light on what access they already have access to, meaning that if somebody saved a file that contains salary information in the shared drive that everybody has access to, now the AI will actually surface that information, right? So it essentially highlights that, oh, hey, you have this information that you have access to. Here you go. So this is why it's absolutely critical for organizations to kind of go through that stabilization phase where you take a look at what data is sitting in what areas and have that cleaned up before you actually unleash AI across your organization. So there's a whole bunch of guardrails that we strongly suggest actually implementing. So first is labeling your data. Okay, the vast majority of small businesses do not have any type of labeling whatsoever. However, this Microsoft 365 platform actually has, with the business premium subscription, which is why we actually push all of our clients to have that level of subscription, is it includes a whole bunch of security tools, one of which is the ability to label data. And there's this whole platform in there called Microsoft Purview, where it's essentially a data loss prevention platform that allows you to label data so that the AI can make sense of, oh, is it accessing stuff that is labeled as strictly confidential and generating output that is supposed to be shared publicly, and it will actually reconcile that to make sure that you're not accidentally leaking data out of your organization. Okay, so labeling data is an essential first step. So turning on Microsoft Purview, going through your systems, labeling your data, making sure that it's appropriately categorized with sensitivity labels. Then what you want to do is then limit access. So people should only have access to exactly what they're supposed to have access to do their job. Same with AI agents. Limit the access so that it follows that principle of least privilege, right? So protecting, so once your data is labeled, you want to make sure that you turn on those purview settings so that the data is, the data labels and how AI and various people use the data is enforced within the organization. So if AI tries to produce a document that's to be sent outside the organization with stuff marked confidential, system will block it. Okay, and then you want to log it so that you actually want visibility into what's happening. And you want to verify that these controls are actually working, right? So by looking at the logs, you can actually see what's getting blocked and what sort of stuff might actually be sneaking through so that you can tweak the filters to minimize the damage. I want to really also emphasize that implementing AI and turning on these functions is absolutely not a set it and forget it type of function, right? I mentioned that in the Microsoft administrative console, just for Copilot settings, there's over 100 different settings in there, and they're adding new settings on a daily basis for how to control how AI is allowed to access your system, what sort of agents people are allowed to install, how it's connected to other systems. All of these controls are evolving, and as security threats are evolving and new AI tools that have more power are actually becoming available, how these settings are configured is absolutely essential. And chances are you're not going to get it right the first time. You want to probably start lock down more than you'd like, and then gradually opening things up to prevent oversharing from happening. Okay. The reality is you can't guide what you can't see, right? So the first thing that you need as a implementation step is you need to actually define what are the approved AI tools within your organization, right? You don't want to make it a free-for-all so that people are using ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and Grok and Copilot and DeepSeek and all of these tools, because if you don't have a list of what tools are approved, now you have to manage every single one of these tools. If a vulnerability actually appears in one of these tools, if you don't know what the tool is being used and you don't know that your data is actually sitting in one of these tools, your data is probably going to end up leaked, right? So the first thing you want to do is define what the approved tools are and lock it down. So we strongly recommend right now, especially with what Microsoft has been doing, is Microsoft Copilot for M365 is probably by far the best platform for your organization to launch right now, right? The Microsoft platform automatically ties into the Microsoft Fabric. It's secured with the identity that your Microsoft 365 Entra ID provides. It's single sign-on. It automatically integrates with all of the tools that everybody uses already. And it has a whole bunch of guardrails in place that make sense for businesses. Like when you start integrating other tools in, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude, there's great integrations, right? Like those tools are very powerful. However, it's very difficult for you to have the same level of granular control compared to Microsoft 365. And the beauty of what Microsoft has done is a few months ago, they realized that they were actually betting on just one model and it didn't make sense anymore, right? So when they launched Copilot, they had a really strong relationship with OpenAI. And through that relationship, they realized that, hey, at some point in time, Claude actually became a better model than OpenAI. And then maybe in a few months, OpenAI is going to become better than Claude. And maybe Grok's going to become better. Who knows? So they've actually now opened up the opportunity for you as a business using Microsoft 365 Copilot to select and allow multiple models. So right now, inside Copilot Studio, you can actually turn on the ability to use Claude, including Claude's Fable 5, which is the essentially the top ranked model in the world. You can use GPT version 5.6, which is the second best ranked model in the world. You can also use Grok. There's a whole bunch of different models that are now actually available within the Microsoft platform. And you don't have to actually have all these other tools and subscriptions that you pay for that have to have different security permissions and integrations that need to be reviewed. If you just turn on Copilot for M365 and select which models you want your people to have access to, a lot of these guardrails are automatically in place, which actually really simplifies how AI is adopted within your organization. And as I mentioned, these tools are already integrated into the apps that everybody's already using, right? It's tightly integrated with Teams, being able to transcribe and read Teams meeting transcripts. It's embedded into Microsoft Word to modify, edit documents into PowerPoint, into Outlook. Like it's absolutely beautiful what Microsoft has done here. Okay, so to control what AI tools are in place, first of all, you need to actually have a policy, but the policy needs to be practical, right? So policy needs to define that people should only use approved AI tools. They need to do the right things to protect business data. So you need to have a policy around data sensitivity, data security, data compliance. You also want to have people make sure that they're actually reviewing the output of AI and not just sending stuff out or kind of treating it as gospel without actually reviewing it first. So verifying the output is absolutely key. Critical, making sure that people realize that they are accountable for the output of what AI is generating. And then opening up the ability for them to ask questions and who to go to. So who's the AI champion within your organization? Who's responsible for the policy? Who's responsible for things that may fall outside of the policy, so that they know who to ask and when to ask, how to ask the questions, so they get appropriate answers, so that it doesn't block them from doing work. So you can see that the stabilization phase has a number of pieces to it, and this is the phase that you should actually be looking in days 31 to 60, is actually putting all these guardrails in place so that your organization is AI ready. And AI ready at scale is actually the big thing, right? You can turn on AI right now, but if people start using AI tools without the governance structure in place, things will become chaos, and you will inadvertently leak data that you don't want to leak. You'll open up security vulnerabilities, and you'll actually have people actually exfiltrate information or put your organization at compliance risk, and you don't want that. All right, so the final 30 days, now this is the launch phase. Okay, this is actually how you actually launch the tools. Having education around this is really, really key part of it. And as I mentioned, the beauty of using Microsoft 365 Copilot is that people already are using the tools that AI is tightly integrated with, right? Like Copilot for 365 tightly integrates with Outlook. They can summarize threads. They can you can actually have it say craft responses. Tell me what emails I've missed in the last 7 days. I've come back from vacation. Tell me what I've missed in the last 15 days. It does all of that stuff, and it's just embedded right there in Outlook. In Teams, you can have it summarize meetings, automatically send follow-ups. In Word, you can actually draft, rewrite a document. Like, how many of you have had to write a big, long proposal and then realize that, oh, there's one thing that we need to change where it's referenced about 30 times inside the proposal, but we've decided to change the philosophy on that, and now you got to find it. Well, with AI, you can actually just tell it, say, hey, we've decided to change this. Find all places in the document and actually replace it with this, and it will actually go and do it. So it could save you hours and hours of work. Excel, you can use it to explore data, identify patterns. You can use it to create summaries, create tables, all kinds of really, really useful things. And PowerPoint, you can use it to modify presentations, use it to coach you for presentations. Super powerful what the AI tools that are already embedded in the apps that people use can already do. Okay, so should you just go out and buy everybody a Copilot license? Well, it's an investment, and a license gives access, but you need people to actually adopt it to create the true value, right? So what you need is, you need people to bring real work to the AI, not just the fun stuff, right? Make sure they can save a few minutes here and there, but the true value is to be able to build repeatable habits where they can consistently save 5, 10, 20, 50% of the time for processes that are repeated thousands of times within the organization. And that's actually where AI can actually drive efficiency at scale within your organization. Okay, so better prompts means better work. Okay, the role, tell AI who it should act. The instruction, explain what it needs to do. Provide the steps, provide the end goal. Okay, so every prompt should contain those 4 things. RISE is the acronym that we like to use for that. But the 5th step is also critical. You want to actually make sure that instead of just creating a broad response, that it narrows the response to the specific target audience and the specific outcome that you're actually looking for. So by narrowing it down, now you have RISEN, which is a great acronym for people to remember. Every prompt should actually contain all 5 of these items. And if they follow this, they will actually be able to truly leverage the power of AI. Okay, in terms of adoption of technology has always been a huge issue, right? In the 3 decades that we've been in business, we've seen companies invest hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars on new tools, only to have it fall flat, where people are like refusing to use systems or just going back to the old way of doing things. Okay, and the reality is that people don't adopt technology for the sake of technology. They adopt better ways to work. Okay, so you have to be able to showcase to them that, hey, this new tooling, these new AI agents, they're not there to micromanage you or to actually make your life more difficult. It's actually there to make your work better. And once they start realizing that and start implementing in a way that truly helps them do work, they will actually see the power of it. I remember when we actually started building our data warehouse, and I gave the agent to our managers, the first response was that, geez, like Vince is trying to micromanage us. And they actually, the adoption was really low. So what I had to do was I had to really start using and getting together with them to show them examples of how this AI tool actually makes them better managers. It reduces the amount of work that they need to do to figure out what's going on in their system and with their team members. And by doing that, now they're actually using that tool to leverage the true power of what it was built for, is that they're actually seeing that, wow, this actually saves me hours a day and gets me information that I wouldn't have access to. It actually prevents me from getting in trouble for things that I couldn't see. And now they actually see it as, this is a better way to work. And this is how people adopt technology, right? So measure what truly matters. Is it time? Is it quality? Is it consistency? How do you measure adoption, right? Like, you can actually take a look, like inside Copilot, another cool thing about it is, because it's actually built on the Microsoft Fabric, you can actually see how many people are actually using it, and you can see who's actually using it. And through that, you can actually then generate reports on how is adoption going, who's using it the most, who's maybe not touching it at all, who do we need to give more education around, who do we actually want to actually turn into a power user that mentors the others. And through that, that's actually how you drive adoption throughout your organization. Okay. And then the other piece that we talked about is risk, right? So are people actually using it responsibly? Are the guardrails that you have in place effective? Is your data actually properly classified? Are the right controls in place to prevent data from leaving your organization, right? So as a business leader driving AI adoption, by day 90, you should actually have a handle on it. Like, you should have a handle on where to use AI within your organization, how to use it safely, and what to scale next. Because now you actually have an example of one workflow that you've picked in the 90 days. And then now you can actually take that template and turn it into other projects that have a true scalable impact on how AI is adopted, that actually helps your organization really take things to the next level. Okay. I talked about the government funding. So the government funding has a number of requirements. You need to have a clear problem. Okay. You need to be able to have measurable outcomes. You need to have a realistic plan, and you need to have a foundation for how this is going to be implemented around security, privacy, governance, the data quality. All of those things need to be in place in order for you to have a funding ready project. Okay, and if you can define things and actually figure out where AI is actually adoptable within your organization, by day 90, if you've actually implemented everything properly, you should actually be able to see success in your organization for the impact that this one workflow that you've picked has made. And then now you can actually build other projects, and you can apply for that funding and now truly scale how AI is actually implemented across your organization. Okay, so the 90-day plan, pick one workflow. You should have one owner. I love the comment that one of my coaches actually said. He said, if you want to have, you want to make sure that a plant dies, make two people accountable for watering it, right? So having one owner, one person accountable for the initiative is critical. When you have multiple owners, nobody's accountable. Okay, use one approved tool. Okay, the environment. We suggest Microsoft Copilot. It's actually the best model because Copilot actually gives you access to Claude. The Claude Fable 5 is actually part of what Copilot actually offers inside Cowork right now. And that's actually a beautiful tool that you can actually implement with a lot of guardrails already in place, tightly integrated with the apps people use, and easy for people to adopt. And then have one measurable outcome. What result are you going to track? Did it make it better? Was it the same? Or did it actually make it worse? Right? So with all of these in mind, that is your 90-day plan. And with that 90-day plan, once you've achieved success, then you can figure out what the other projects are and see if you can actually qualify for some funding to really scale AI in your organization. So as I talked about with the kind of the data quality slide, don't begin with AI, begin with readiness, right? Make sure you have the right security in place, the right data, and the right workflow, and the right questions that you're actually asking AI to do. Once you have that ready, then AI comes into the picture and you can adopt it effectively. So we've put together an AI adoption, essentially a scorecard that we can actually walk your organization through. So we'll actually meet with you, walk through a whole bunch of different questions and kind of score where you are on the readiness scale, which will provide you with next steps for what you need to focus on. And from that, you'll actually have a report that provides you with next steps for how do you actually launch AI effectively in your organization. So if you want access to that, I have a limited number of bookings available. These are meetings that I actually handle personally myself. So if you want a meeting with me to run through this scorecard, we're going to go through readiness. We're going to look at data hygiene, data readiness. We'll look at configuration of Copilot or Gemini if you're using Google Docs. We'll have a conversation around security. And then we'll have conversations around employee adoption. And then from that, we'll have answers to all the questions that we have in this scorecard, and we'll generate a report for what you need to do next. So if you want to sign up for that, go to hub.experait.com/AI-scorecard to sign up, or scan the QR code, and we can actually get things rolling. So I'm going to open up the floor to questions right now. So if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the questions portion. And I've got a few minutes to answer those before we wrap up today. All right, so one of the questions I'm actually seeing is like why a lot of the AI tools like Claude and ChatGPT have integrations into Microsoft 365 already available. Why don't they just implement those in the organizations? So one of the things that you have to be cautious of when actually using AI tools that are outside of the Microsoft ecosystem is how are you controlling access, right? So are you allowing people to just use their own accounts and actually link it into your Microsoft data? Or do you actually have a sanctioned team account where you're using like ChatGPT team version or Claude's team version, and you actually control all the access? And the access should actually be set up with single sign-on as well, where you're actually logging on to the AI platform using your Microsoft credentials. That way, if somebody leaves the organization, you retain access to that account. So it doesn't mean, it means that if their employment is terminated for any reason, you can terminate access to that account. If they're using their personal account, everything that they've ever put into that account now potentially leaves with them. And that's a huge risk to your organization. Right. And then the other thing is, as I mentioned, there's a lot of guardrails in place that Microsoft has already put in. If you're actually integrating it from the outside, you have to actually put those guardrails in place yourself. And that's a pretty huge undertaking to do that. And the tools are not also tightly integrated into the Office apps. All right. Yeah, so I think see Paul's question there. I think it's pretty much the same question, difference between implementing AI from ChatGPT versus using open source. Oh, actually, okay, so that, I see the difference with your question there. So if you're using like a commercially available hosted AI platform, like ChatGPT, you are unfortunately at the mercy of that model. So we actually kind of saw over the last few months where there was a lot of backlash. So for example, like a lot of organizations were using Claude for Claude Code. And then Anthropic suddenly decided, oh, by the way, we're actually removing Claude code from your account, and now you have to buy it by paying for tokens, right? And then the cost for implementing the AI went from a fixed known cost to an unknown cost that increased exponentially. So by using like a hosted platform like OpenAI's ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude, you're at the mercy of doing that. If you're actually hosting it yourself using open source technology, the drawback to that is you have to have the infrastructure to do that, right? Like these AI data centers have very, very powerful compute built into them. And what's happening there is, like, if you want to have the same level of performance, you probably need to actually turn on or spin up a bunch of these resources. Like AWS and Microsoft Azure have the ability to spin up these as Foundry AI models, but you're paying for all the compute. And the more powerful the model needs to be, the more compute time you're actually paying, which could get really, really expensive. However, you retain control of the model, and you have a kind of a better handle on the costs from a model perspective, but you might have as a spin-off to that, you might have increased costs in compute, because as models get more powerful, they are also actually more hungry for compute resources as well. For example, like Claude's Opus 4.8 uses less compute power than the Fable 5 model, right? And because of that, if you were actually upgrading the model on your own hosted infrastructure, you could actually be paying a lot more for additional compute in order to keep the same performance levels. Don't see any other questions. So if anybody else has any questions, I would love to hear from you. I'm going to post one more poll here. So I'd like to just get an idea of who is interested in getting an AI scorecard for your organization. If you can just vote on that. Would you be interested in an AI readiness and governance scorecard? So just vote on that. And then if there's no more questions, I've got just a couple minutes left, and then we'll actually wrap things up here. Okay, so the reality here is that AI adoption is already happening in every organization, whether you like it or not. And it's actually leadership that needs to actually decide whether it becomes a strategy. Because if you just let it run unmanaged, it becomes a free-for-all for everybody. So I've got a question around Perplexity through Copilot. Perplexity is not yet available. However, Microsoft is actually constantly adding new models. So like the Claude, Fable 5, they have Grok, and they have another model. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Those are all actually available as experimental models. And literally over the next few days, that might actually change. There might be more models available. So they're constantly adding more and more functionality. But as of today, Perplexity is not available yet. All right, if there's no more questions, I want to thank all of you for joining me today. And you have my email address. Feel free to send off an email to me if you have any questions, and would love to connect with you. Scan the QR code from the earlier slide, and we'll see you guys at the next event.